many who heard him were astounded. They said, "Where did this man get all this? What is this wisdom that has been given to him? What deeds of power are being done by his hands? Is not this the carpenter, the son of Mary and brother of James and Joseph, and Judas and Simon? And are not his sisters here with us?" And they took offense at him. Then Jesus said to them, "Prophets are not without honor, except in their hometown, and among their own kin, and in their own house." And he could do no deed of power there, except that he laid his hands on a few sick people and cured them. And he was amazed at their unbelief. Then he went about among the villages, teaching. He called the 12 and began to send them out 2 by 2, and gave them authority over the unclean spirits. He ordered them to take nothing for their journey except a staff, no bread, no bag, no money in their belts, but to wear sandals and not to put on 2 tunics. He said to them, "Whenever you enter a house, stay there until you leave the place, and if any place will not welcome you, and they refuse to hear you, as you leave, shake off the dust that is on your feet as a testimony against them." So they went out and proclaimed that all should repent. They cast out many demons and anointed with oil many who were sick and cured them. The gospel of Christ.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
God, your word is life. May that life indwell us. Amen. I hope this summer that many of you have chances for vacations. They can be big or little. A day trip, a time at a cottage, or a road trip across the country. I've been up to Tobermory for several days, and it was a wonderful and it was refreshing. What are your hopes for your vacation? Is it rest, adventure, a change of pace, refreshment, fun, a chance to reflect, work without distractions, or learn something new, reconnect with family and friends, or maybe make new friends? It is interesting that the word vacation means to vacate, to make space, to become empty of what fills your life. And when you place this beside Christ urging us to travel light, it makes sense. Empty yourself, that my power can fill you, that you have room for what I want to teach you or to think about. So this year we might say, I'm going on vacation to vacate my life and enter God's life more fully, or to know myself a little better, find balance. And without doing a thing, God will love me for no good reason at all, and all things will then be able to come to me. Remember that the very first vacations were not called vacations if we go back hundreds of years. Do you know what they were called? Pilgrimages. To holy sites, to encounter God, and to be absorbed by what God might want us to experience. We couldn't when our minds are filled with our daily tasks, routines, and responsibilities. Well, in that note, I'd say Jesus really loved vacations, in the sense that he traveled constantly and lightly, like a pilgrim. He took very little with him and made, as he traveled, lots of open space for God, his Father, to be with him. He opened himself to God's power and was guided by him. And he opened himself to the hospitality others offered to him. And to those he did not, what did he do? Yeah, you would act that well for us. He dusted off the sand on his sandals, and he moved on. Today we're going to explore how we travel lightly and how we handle the times when on our travels we experience no hospitality towards us and our presence rejected, not wanted. Is it a reason to close shop, stop traveling, feel a failure? Or does God have something in that too when we travel with God? Very early in life in his public ministry, Jesus traveled back to his hometown. He was already making a name for himself as a man of God. Word was spreading really fast across the country about this healer, rabbi, prophet. And today's gospel records his experience of returning home. Now we know about a hero's welcome home, and you may even have had one. We can get them from our families and friends where we work, when we return from a long absence, or maybe they're celebrating us in some way, a birthday, a graduation, an anniversary, a new career. Now, sports celebrities and famous musicians and movie stars, writers and political figures, they receive royal welcomes, keys to the city, and often luxurious gifts. Now, there's one TV show I haven't watched for several years, but you may have watched it, and it goes on now, called American and Canadian Idol. Has anyone seen that? No? You've never watched American Idol? Okay. Well, it's all about young people getting an opportunity to shine and be known in the nation as great singers, and then the top contestant gets a contract worth millions to become a singer and to produce albums. When the top 4 finalists were named, they were given a break to go home. And their welcome home was incredible. The support of a hometown, no matter what size, can be enormous when one of its own becomes a superstar overnight. So this slide will show you 2018 American Idol finalist Maddie Poppy. She's visiting her hometown of Clarksville, Iowa. And the next one is Gabby Barrett. Visits her hometown of Pittsburgh on May 15th of this year, warmly greeted by friends, family, and fans. And then the next one, jet at home, is Nick Fradiani. And he's back in his hometown of Guilford, Connecticut, where 10,000 fans flooded the Guilford Green on May 1st to welcome him home. Now look at this picture. Doesn't the picture remind you of the crowds, the way they're reaching out to him, of Jesus? You know, when it talks about the crowds couldn't get enough of him? All right, so Jesus is now returning to his hometown of Nazareth, where he will begin to gather disciples around him. What kind of welcome does he get? What would you expect from a man who is drawing constant crowds, whom John the Baptist and prophets for centuries have predicted was coming to rule and save all Israel? Well, within days, Jesus will be saying to those disciples, "If any place will not welcome or listen to you, leave that place and shake the dust off your feet as a testimony against them." He's speaking of his hometown of Nazareth and the places the disciples, powerful and history-changing as their ministry was, will visit and sometimes be rejected. It's a mute point to say, have you ever been rejected? Or have you ever rejected? I think we all have. How did that go for you? Were you able to somehow get through it? Maybe some of the people that rejected Jesus felt badly later. Others were simply offended, closed-minded, that he dared to speak with authority about God. How do you maintain a relationship with someone who has rejected your attempts to share your faith with them or share yourself? We can see in Jesus' life, however, he not only dealt with rejection, but he overcame it to win disciples nonetheless. And the first point that we need to know that he makes is Jesus accepted it. Things hurt less when we are prepared for them. And Jesus knew that obtaining credibility for something new from people who know us, like our families, is very difficult. They'd seen him as a child and a young man and had trouble visualizing who he really was. They clung to the image that they were familiar and comfortable with rather than accept the new reality, which would force them to change too. You see, it's okay for you to change, but when the change in you requires a change in others, people feel uncomfortable, especially at times family and friends. Jesus understood this. And although he was prepared to preach and teach them, he was ready for the rejection because he knew of the difficulty in reaching one's own, even when you are the Son of God. Now this should be of comfort to us when we feel guilty because we seem to have so little influence with those who are closest to us. And also make us reconsider, maybe starting with empathy. And instead of being hurt, first, let people know we get it. Secondly, he focused on the rewards of rejection, not the pain. The disciple Peter felt lonely in the fact that he had been separated from his home and family because of his faith in Jesus. And you know what Jesus did? He said, of course your family mattered to you, don't give up. But look around you. You've got a bigger family now. These are all your brothers and sisters. So he gave Peter a new way to look at his life. Following Jesus has never been easy. Traveling new paths does not guarantee everyone will agree with your choices. And one of the costs has traditionally been estrangement. The rewards of following Christ and the light within you as you travel are the creation of a new circle of family and friends, and the faith to know God has not given up on your old circle of family and friends. You keep the door open. Now you probably know the expression well. You'll complete it for me. When one door closes, I know, and I can groan about it, but do we remember it? Many of us have given presentations for what we think is the very best project in the world to our companies, or church family, or organization, and we hear a resounding no. How do we handle that? It's really hard when you are young to have many resources for the pain of rejection. We need family and parents and grandparents, older siblings to help us through. Any child that is perceived as different, whether it be appearance, the way they talk, dress, express themselves, what they eat and don't eat, are at high risk of being bullied. One vegan parent shared with me once how her child's teachers, not their classmates who were curious, singled them out, had major issues with their plant-based diet, and said a lot of things to them that were put downs, and used words like stupid, unhealthy, nonsense. While we might become moody, withdrawn, unsure about ourselves when others reject our lifestyles, our gifts, or friendships, Jesus knows that there would be other messengers that can pick up where we left off. The very people that rejected Jesus because he was a hometown boy would get another chance to hear the very same gospel from others. Apostles would preach, and the early saints would bring the message through this region again in the years to come. Many times, we think there's something wrong with us. We feel less secure and confident. We take on a great burden of responsibility that is unnecessary, a guilt or shame and sadness that Jesus does not want us to carry, nor to give up hope. And I want to read you what Tom Ray writes about all of this. And I apologize, the first line has a bit of a word in it, but it's his word. When I was little, I was a smart-ass. Well, I guess that's still the case. But in my childhood, I had the worst time socializing. Maybe I was just too sensitive. Maybe I wanted to be special. But I know that I carried a longing to be loved and accepted ever since. And who hasn't? It is hard to find someone who doesn't believe in love. We all search for approval. I believe that behind every action we take, there is underlying desire for love. But who are we trying to love? Ourselves? Are we trying to be loved instead by anyone who will witness our decisions? Without eliminating the concept of rejection from our minds, it's hard to be truly happy and free. Rejection is indeed part of the human experience and the way we travel through life. But don't we have the freedom, he writes, to reinvent ourselves? Can't we change the way we feel, react, and experience things? How much of our experience is automatic? And how much of it can we change with God's transforming love in the works? The heart holds far more power than we believe. The more attentive we become to what the heart is telling us, the more Christ-like and Christ's power filled we become. And we shut down that false truth, I am rejectable. There are strategies that we develop to reinforce the impressions that we are undeserving of love. And that renders this question: how many strategies have you set up for your own demise? And how many for your salvation? Olivia Donaldson tried an experiment, and I think you'll enjoy hearing about this, to overcome her fear of rejection. And I dare you to try it. Don't dare me, I don't know. I want to share it with you. For 7 days, she asked total strangers questions that would lead to rejection. Now, it sounds crazy, but it worked. And after that, it was easy to take risks with real questions that were important to her. Here is her first-hand account of her experience. My heart feels like it's going to literally jump out of my rib cage because it's pounding so hard. And I'm not even doing anything more strenuous than walking through Walmart. I take a deep breath and tell myself that I can do this. Then walk up to a Walmart employee restocking meat. I take a deep breath and tell myself I can do this. Excuse me, could I borrow $100? The woman stared at me for a split second. I'm not really sure what she was thinking, but she said, maybe, if I had $100. I have a question for you, and I'm continuing with her quotes. What would be different in your life if you didn't have a fear of rejection? What opportunities would be able to take hold of? Would it increase your quality of life, your connection with people? I did this exact challenge about a year ago because I was so afraid of rejection. It was holding me back from traveling through life freely, from asking people little things, and I was taking any small social rejection way harder than I needed to. It had had an unnecessary hold of my life. I was not traveling lightly. My fear was like heavy baggage on an otherwise great road trip. After my first question in Walmart, the next day was a lot easier. I asked in a store if they would give me a free cake for my upcoming birthday. The answer was no, but I felt good about it. I asked a police officer if I could ride in the front seat of his cruiser for the day. And at Starbucks, if I could make my own coffee. A week later, after asking strangers to build paper airplanes with me, asking for a tour of a food delivery truck, asking if Best Buy sold real lightsabers, yet, and other stupid questions, I felt great. It didn't take as much effort for me to ask someone something like this. I still notice the effects of this experiment to this day. Rejection doesn't have a strong hold on my life anymore. She goes on just to close with this. It helped her to close, and I have a few more things. It helped facilitate my self-confidence. It let me travel lightly through my day and trust the heart and soul that God gave me. When you don't fear rejection, approval from other people isn't the only thing you're thinking about. It allows you to go further in life doing the things that you care about doing. And I challenge you to try it. It's just 7 days. Don't give rejection any power over your life. Christ wants that power. Sometimes the fear of rejection is hiding in little things. Everything we can do either reinforces that fear or simply cancels it out and makes room for a loving experience instead. I believe we can do this without knowing it. Open ourselves more in our weakness to the power of Christ. So I want to go on to the next slide because I'm going to fly a little bit here. Jesus wanted people to be real with him. I think we're on to the next one, actually. He was hardest on those who appeared religious and promised people God's grace, but didn't offer it themselves or didn't allow you into the temple of God if you were poor, sick, or unclean. No one has suffered more rejection than God has. And yet because of his great love and patience, God continues to offer his forgiveness and salvation to all. With Christ's love and our openness to his power, when we feel weak, realize you are strong. It's another kind of power that rises up in us. It sounds contradictory, but it's true. In our weakness, we find in Christ an incredible source of power. Paul spoke about this and praised God for his thorns. So that's another way to look at it. We don't know what it was. Now, it could be emotional or physical or mental. And I think it was depression. I think Paul suffered depression, but I don't know. He was also rejected a lot as not good enough to be a true disciple. His credentials weren't strong, as others, even though his ministry was powerful. He traveled lightly with God, and he suffered his thorns, believing that somehow made the power of God stronger in him. So we all have thorns, don't we? And I've been prickled by my thorns of my roses. Really, we likely have lots of different thorns all through our lives. My thorn right now in my life is accumulation of stuff that I need to take time to let go of, and some brave steps towards the new life I have now. Like Paul, I have prayed and prayed and prayed that this thorn could be plucked out of my life, that I could wake up and have these hurdles crossed. It's painful and uncomfortable. It makes my life more difficult. I just do not like it and don't want to deal with it. We all have need of grace for our travels. God is faithful and amazing, and roses come with the thorns. God does not give us more than we can bear. And while I didn't realize I could bear some things I have in my life, Jesus did. He knew that I could, and you can, because he would be there sustaining you and and delivering us through the difficult days and months and years. So I would like to end here, but I have about 10 more slides. So I'm going to show them to you and just speak really lightly to them. Every weakness you have is an opportunity for God to show his strength in your life. So we just reinforce that. And that we should be thankful, even though that seems strange to say sometimes, for the thorns in our flesh. Because it's a moment for, in our weakness, God's strength to come through. And I like this next one and the reading on it. Would you say it out loud, everyone? That's pretty cool, isn't it? And the next one just reinforces us. We'll say that one together. My grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect. And the next one shows, again, that whatever thorn we have, God, we can praise God that grace flows through our lives, that love and mercy flow towards us. And so to recap these next two slides, just say it. Say it together. The prerequisite to experience. Now in the next slide, it's supposed to say leave, not learn, not leave. So say learn. Embrace weakness, learn contentment, rest in grace. And we come to the final set that are really quite priceless. And it's a whole new homily, so I'm not going to do it. But this is what we carry. And I can't believe this happens. But a problem gets heavier when only one person carries it. Share the load. But can you imagine how much we carry sometimes in our heart? That gives you an idea. So if you look at the next one, you'll see a few more. Never give up. And next slide. With God's help and each other's, we can give up our loads. I know. These are real pictures. And the next one. And there's two more of the loads. Yet, that's how sometimes we feel inside. And so the last two slides, we'll read this last one together. Take nothing except a staff, wear sandals, but not an extra tunic. And the last one is a quote of one of my favorite musicians and our Canadian sweetheart. What does he say? Amen.